The NBA never disappoints. Don't ever complain about a lack of drama. Don't ever complain about a lack of trades ever again. This night has broken the NBA. I've recorded this video twice because every time I go to record it, something else happens. At first, the Nets traded away Mikal Bridges for basically every pick that the Knicks could ever offer. Then the Nets trade with Houston so that they can get some of their first round pick capital back because they're obviously going to be worse without Mikal Bridges. That makes total sense. Then Woj says that the reason Houston is trading with Brooklyn is so that they can get some of the Phoenix picks so that they can trade some of those Phoenix picks to the Suns to try and go get Kevin Durant. Okay, let's follow this all in the order of what I just said. First, let's talk about Brooklyn trading away Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks. Those of you that have watched my channel before, I assume a lot of you guys are new. I am a Nets fan, and this is the best possible outcome. Whatever has happened this evening is as good as it gets in terms of how to actually rebuild this team, because it became clear in the middle of the year this year that they were just never going to be anything better than like a 40-win team with Mikal Bridges as the lead guy. It was clear that he was valuable. It was clear that it was important that they got him as a trade piece from Phoenix in the Kevin Durant trade. The Kevin Durant trade, by the way, that now basically reads as 11 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps plus Cam Johnson in exchange for Kevin Durant. Just keep that in mind. That's what the trade looks like basically right now for Brooklyn. And once it became clear that, hey, they weren't going to be any good, the right move was to trade away Mikal Bridges. However, the Nets thought that their best way forward was to try and attract a star to play alongside Mikal Bridges, or at least that was what was known publicly, and presumably that guy was Donovan Mitchell. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Donovan Mitchell has basically agreed to an extension in Cleveland, and then the next day, Mikal Bridges is being traded from the Nets to the New York Knicks because they're realizing that they're not going to be able to add a star. I think option one was Donovan Mitchell and potentially down the road some other guys. And then the Knicks just come with this crazy offer that the Nets just cannot refuse. We know that in the past, even going back to the trade deadline at which the Nets added Mikal Bridges, they were offered at least 4 first-round picks from Memphis and presumably other teams as well. We know that Houston, who is also involved in this, offered some stuff, including some of the Nets' own picks back in exchange for Mikal Bridges. We know the value is there, but I'd have to imagine that the Knicks' offer for Mikal Bridges this evening is maximum peak, like above 150% of what Mikal Bridges' trade value is. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad move for the Knicks. We're going to talk about them in a second, but it is certainly peak value and well above peak value for the Nets. It is 4 unprotected first-round picks from New York. It is a 2028 protected first-round Milwaukee pick. It's a pick swap from the Knicks, and then they swap second-round picks. So then when you add that to the KD trade, like I said, it's basically 11 first and 2 swaps that they got in the KD trade. And there's really nothing to say for Brooklyn other than this was always the right move. And then when you combine it with some of these other moves that's also being connected along with Houston, it all just makes perfect sense. I could not be more ecstatic as a Nets fan. For the Knicks, this is clearly a lot to give up to complete the Villanova college basketball infinity gauntlet, right? Like adding Mikal Bridges was something that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It was a trade that made absolute sense for them, especially with the OG Anunoby situation potentially up in the air, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But you know that these 4 guys, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, I can't even believe that 1, they're all successful NBA players, and 2, they're all actually on the same team. You know those guys work well together. You know they all want to be on the same team. And you know that Bridges is exactly what this roster needs, especially if OG Anunoby potentially ends up leaving. It's a ton of value. There's no denying that. But if they looked at their options for adding a player to this group, whether it be trading some stuff for Paul George, whether it be they thought they could get Donovan Mitchell, whatever the case may be, clearly they looked at their options and they thought Mikal Bridges is the best fit around what we already have because we know that he provides size, he can guard, even though he had a down year last year offensively. Obviously, he's not going to have nearly as much offensive responsibility. We have those 4 guys. We have Randall. We figure out our front court rotation with Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson, depending on Hartenstein's free agency. We hopefully bring back OG Anunoby. And if you can just imagine for a moment a 7 or 8 man rotation, even if they keep Julius Randle, which I think it's possible they could move him for somebody else, even if they keep Julius Randle and maybe they lose Hartenstein, they get Mitchell Robinson and they just get a random backup 5, right? Their rotation would basically be the 4 Villanova guys, all of which are very good NBA players, Brunson of which is a top 5 MVP candidate this past season, plus OG Anunoby, plus Julius Randle, plus Mitchell Robinson, plus a handful of other guys, Bogdanovich still on the roster potentially. That is an unbelievably deep and versatile team. I don't know necessarily if OG is 100% coming back as they're recording this video, but I would presume that they would still be able to, and that would be obviously unbelievable for them to have that much versatility. I don't even know who would or wouldn't start. Maybe DiVincenzo and Hart would come off the bench, and you start OG, Mikal Bridges, Randall, and a 5, and you just have this huge lineup around Brunson. People are going to not like this trade for the Knicks. They're going to say that it's too much value, and they are correct, but that doesn't mean that it is a bad deal. We talked about this a couple of weeks weeks ago with that Knicks offseason video. You could talk about stars, you could talk about Paul George, you could talk about Donovan Mitchell, but it was all about the right fit around Jalen Brunson. It wasn't necessarily about adding star power, which is what the Knicks of the past would have done. It was about the right fit. And even though this is absolutely too much in exchange for Mikal Bridges, it could still absolutely be worth it in an Eastern Conference that is pretty weak outside of the Boston Celtics, and the Knicks clearly see an opportunity to potentially go and put themselves into contention. So like I said, I've already recorded this a few times. I connect all of these dots, and then the Nets trade some stuff to Houston to basically get their own first-round picks back. Not all of them, but some of them. And the mindset there for Brooklyn is clear. They want to rebuild. They want to move forward. And obviously the best way to rebuild is be bad, have your own picks, and then go from there. And of course, they have a ton of first-round picks now as a result of the KD as well as Mikal Bridges trades, although they've swapped some of those Phoenix picks back and forth with Houston. This was a trade structure that always made a little bit of sense, although most people thought that it would be directly involving Mikal Bridges rather than Bridges going somewhere else. And then the Nets later also moving some picks to get some of their Houston picks back. They've been offered some of their own picks back from Houston in exchange for Mikal Bridges. It always made sense for if the Nets were going to rebuild, they either just weren't going to care about the first round picks because they've done that before when they did the disaster KG and Paul Pierce thing. They were able to rebuild that without their own picks. They either were just going to not care, sunk costs, get future first round picks, be bad anyway, it doesn't matter, just get value, trade away our good players, or they were going to do both. They were going to trade away their good players and also get some of their picks back from Houston. The interesting wrinkle that I never expected, that Woj just kind of floated out there a little bit, like just as if it was nothing, as if it wasn't a big deal, was that part of the reason that Houston wanted picks from the Nets and were willing to give back some of the Nets some of their own picks is because they own the Phoenix first round picks. So they didn't get all the Phoenix first, but they got some of them. And that, of course, is immensely valuable to Phoenix in the same way that it was immensely valuable to Brooklyn, where the Suns could look at the situation and say, hey, it didn't work. We tried it for a year. We made a mistake with the Beal thing. They could theoretically, hold on, Woj is tweeting. It was just a few more details that I've already shown on screen. Everything's fine. The Suns could theoretically, if they really wanted to, they could do like what OKC did when they traded Paul George and Russ and all this stuff. They could decide, you know what? We tried it for a year, it didn't work. Let's trade KD to Houston. Let's get some of our own first back that we got from the Nets. Let's trade away Devin Booker for a ton of stuff. Let's try and get something for Bradley Beal. Full super duper reset. They wouldn't get all their picks back, I wouldn't think, because how would you rope in the Nets to give in their own picks unless you're getting something from a Booker trade? That would be like a 16 trade. It would be insane, right? But like theoretically, you could do something similar to what the Nets have just tried to do, as well as what OKC did back in the day, by trading away Durant and Devin Booker and all these guys. And the important wrinkle and connection here with Houston is that Ime Udoka, current Rockets head coach, former Celtics head coach, got to the Celtics because he was an assistant on the Nets team that beat Boston 4-1 in the first round in 2021, the year that the Nets, arguably, in my opinion, should have won the title. The team falls apart after that. Udoka goes Boston, now is in Houston. Those two guys obviously know each other, and presumably that's part of the relationship that has been built between potentially Houston and Phoenix as they maybe possibly work out a KD trade. That feels unrealistic. Woj later clarified that that was a goal of Houston's. It's not their only goal. They just want picks. They want to continue to add other players, and without a clear direction moving forward in Brooklyn, those picks weren't as valuable because they could have brought back Bridges, maybe added a couple of guys and won 40 games, whereas if you're getting some of the Phoenix picks back way in the future, those are arguably more valuable even than what the Nets have, unless the Nets go into a full rebuild, in which case the Nets picks are more valuable to them, which is why you're able to get maybe picks that might be more valuable to the other teams, which are Phoenix's first, in exchange for picks that might be more valuable to the Nets in the form, I should say, of their first. All of that to say, never count out the NBA, man. You just never do it. Like, these are things that would only happen in 2K, and they happen in real life. They don't happen in other leagues, man. They happen in the NBA. I love this stuff, man. This is so fun, and I can't wait to see what happens coming up here. We got the draft tomorrow, like 24 hours from right now is the NBA draft, and the league has just completely changed.